Hi everyone. Today we'll be exploring the current landscape and general context around user acquisition in Web3. Each year the BGA carries out a State of Industry report, and this year 35.4% of respondents saw user acquisition as a pressing challenge. And this has been a consistent theme since our initial report in 2021. Onboarding users is still a point of friction, and while Web3 offers a lot of unique possibilities, there is still a lot of work to be done to facilitate user acquisition, the user experience, and onboarding into Web3. So today we're joined by Travis from Trophy and Mieszko from THX Network to look at some of the challenges and solutions they're building to facilitate user acquisition for Web3 games. So welcome, guys. Really happy to have you here. And it'd be great if you could just give a little introduction about yourselves and what you're working on. Travis, please go for it.
I'll kick us off. Hey, my name's Travis Anderson. I've worked in the gaming user acquisition space for about 11 years now. Originally at a small company that was one of the first rewarded user acquisition tools for Facebook, a small company called Peanut Labs. Some people deep in the gaming industry might know what it is. Then I spent some time at Tapjoy, some time at ironSource before obviously there was the large acquisition by Unity last year, as some people probably read about at some point. Currently, I am building Trophy with my co-founder, Riaz Lalani. What we are currently building is what you could look at as a mobile game launcher, where users can come in and try different kinds of games. Web 2 games, Web 3 games are interconnected, and basically give users the opportunity to test new games and earn rewards for every single minute they play those games. So basically the way that it works is a user comes into our app, finds a fun new game that they've never played before, and every hour they play that game, we reward them with virtual currency that they can then turn into different cryptocurrencies.
Mieszko, please go for it.
Yeah, so my name is Mieszko Czyzyk, co-founder at THX Network. So I have a background in digital advertising, actually, so not in the gaming industry. But one of my prior companies was one of the first Google partners in the Netherlands. So I've been around, and I know all about acquisition costs, ad costs, clicks, funnels, analytics, and all of that stuff. And I really like to get into the details of that. And nowadays we are applying that knowledge in our products for gaming companies. So together with my co-founder Peter Polman, who is my CTO, we created THX Network, and we help game studios grow by acquiring new players and retaining them, right? And really focusing on this funnel of getting testers in an alpha stage, early players in beta, and beyond. And I think we do it slightly differently than Trophy. That's good, right? So I think with us, we ask our customers that they bring their own digital assets, right? So they're in-game items, which usually are some type of NFTs or other maybe tokens, ERC20 tokens, and few other types. And we make sure that they get into the hands of potential players. So we provide the infrastructure for questing, we provide the interfaces for the rewards, and we also provide the wallet infrastructure. And we make it super easy so that you don't have to install extensions in your browser, also don't have to pay for gas. It's you sign in with Twitch or Discord or like social channels that gamers already have. You're immediately onboarded to Web3 infrastructure, and you can start right away. We also have some early customers outside of the Web3 space, so game studios which distribute coupon codes, for example, or we experimenting with quests for Steam achievements and wish lists. But most of our customers are in Web3 at the moment. Yeah, based in Amsterdam, living in Amsterdam, wife and kid in Amsterdam. So yeah, really a Dutchie. And yeah, let's have a nice conversation today. Looking forward. Thank you for having me.
So maybe I can jump right in with the first question, and you've kind of touched, both of you, on some of these points in your intro. But what are you seeing in terms of user sentiment currently and the challenges that Web3 games or game studios are currently facing in terms of user acquisition?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of things that a lot of games are struggling with, right? The first thing I think is budget. I think a lot of the studios that I've spoken to, and especially on the Web3 side, I don't think budgeted enough for how much they need to spend to acquire users, right? And especially when you're looking at a global audience, when you're looking outside of like an APAC, when you're looking at tier 1 countries, it's not cheap to acquire high quality users. And I think the number one thing that I'm seeing with a lot of studios that we're talking to is that they might be a little cash strapped to actually have big budgets to go acquire these audiences, right? I think when you look at using Monopoly Go, like Monopoly Go is an interesting example. They're spending, nobody knows how much they're spending daily on user acquisition, but it's been rumored to be somewhere between 350K to 1.5 million on certain days for user acquisition, right? And obviously every studio doesn't have that kind of budget, but I do think that you need to be prepared to have a budget, right? And to go out there and be able to diversify your user acquisition options and not just have one network that you can work with in one country. And so that's the number one thing. I have a long list of things, but I'll kick it off with that.
Yeah, I tend to agree, Travis. So what you see is that getting games funded is more difficult in this environment, especially indie games are having a tough time. And at the same time, these funds are necessary to actually get players on board. So, so this is like a cycle that if you don't get out of it, it's not good, right? So yeah, user acquisition definitely a big challenge. I do see some improvements in terms of, especially in the Web3 space, where game economies tend to be launched a bit later, right? So alpha testing is usually without digital assets. Again, you do need some kind of funding, right? So that there is still a dilemma there. How do you fund an indie game or maybe a smaller title without pre-selling your economy, right? But I think there are some solutions to that. And unfortunately, launching ERC20 tokens too early was one of the mistakes of, let's say, the first generation of Web3 games, which launched very early their economies, and then it took years to actually deliver on it. And by the time it was done, most of the people already left, right? So I think, yes, the smart games and game studios learned from that and are improving on it.
You mentioned, Travis, budget and diversifying strategy. If for studios that don't have a big budget, how can they diversify their ways to acquire users?
I don't think you need a big budget to diversify, but I do think you need to be quick on your toes, and I think you need to test, right? You need to go out there and test the 5 traditional networks and the 3 new questing platforms, and maybe test doing targeting on X or Twitter, whatever you want to call it these days. But you do need to be quick, right? And you need to have actually measurable KPIs that you can look at and say, okay, this is actually unlocking the audience that we're looking for, right? I think there's so many new user acquisition Web3 tools mixed with like a very strong Web2 traditional performance network options. So you need to go out there and be able to have a little bit of budget to test them, so that when you see some successful KPIs, you can actually put more budget into those channels.
Mieszko, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
Yeah, I think testing is super important. So you also see this in digital advertising, right? So a decade ago, everybody was A/B testing the shit out of everything, right? So I'm not sure if I should. you get the point. And this really drives the results, because it's super hard to predict upfront what will work and what will not, and which message exactly resonates with your audience. So you really need to be, and it's a bit of a science actually. It's not only an art, right, to get this right. So yeah, I agree there. In terms of how to get things funded, so I was saying, like, don't launch your C20 economy too early, but I do think it's okay to sell early passes and, you know, some unique characters to your game or things like that, to raise some funding early and to allow for these experiments to happen. So that's a like practical thing I see are also our customers doing, to have these budgets available to experiment, you know. So that's important. And, you know, but it's also a strength of the Web3 space, right? So if you are actually able to offer your in-game items and your game passes yourself, especially for indie developers that don't have a big budget or maybe don't have a publisher, it gives you a bit more control and a bit more power, right? So yeah.
So where is the like intersection of traditional gaming and Web3 gaming user acquisition? What can be carried over, and what needs to be new in the Web3 space, or what do we need to add on?
Yeah. Well, you know, in the end, I don't think there will be, hopefully in a few years, such a thing like a Web3 game. So, you know, there will be fun games people like to play, and some of them will be using blockchain technology, digital assets. Some of them will be on public ledgers, maybe on some other things which, you know, enhance the gaming experience, right? So I think that's the starting point. And then, you know, all the lessons that have been learned from advertising gaming, they are still the same. It's not super different just because you use blockchain as a technology, right? So, but we need to apply them, and also the tooling is only becoming like available like the last couple of, let's say, a year or maybe a year and a half. Tooling that can show you like where is a visitor coming from, which ad network or whatever, how you acquired them, how is it he or she installing your game, what is he or she spending, and things like that, and make it like a whole mappable journey. I think these things are becoming available now, and we play a small part in that with THX Network, Travis with Trophy. But having this like view on your costs and incomes, you know, that is critical to achieve success, you know, business success in the end. So yeah, that's my thoughts on that. What do you think, Travis?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I don't think we're reinventing the wheel, and I think that's good to a degree, right? I think you hear people throw out the Web 2.5 phrase, and let's get away from the Web 3 verbiage. And, you know, I do think, like I kind of said, that you should diversify and test traditional networks and test different messaging, right? I think a lot of these networks are still coming around to using verbiage that traditionally they would not allow, right? Like you couldn't mention crypto, you couldn't mention to earn, and you're just starting to see some of these networks like TikTok, who do have pretty solid acquisition numbers, start to allow some people to get through with certain verbiage. I think with a lot of these games, and we haven't even talked about the core reason why a lot of these games need to succeed by building fun games. But I think a lot of these games should test different verbiage to see if they can unlock certain audiences, right? I think for a long time, not a long time, the last couple of years, everybody's been fighting for the Web3 gamer, and that is a really, really, really small slice of the pie, right? Like when you look at the gaming industry, the Web3 gaming wallets versus the actual amount of gamers is less than 1%. So why would we all be fighting over that 1%, right? You need to go out there and you need to start to acquire users that traditionally we've called Web 2 users, but let's just call them gamers, right? And you need to figure out how can you unlock gamers that not only care about owning items or digital identity, but also just care about playing a fun match 3 game, or care about playing a fun building game or an RPG, et cetera, et cetera. So I think there's a lot of different things that we can test as game studios to unlock the right audience. It doesn't just have to be a Web3 gamer anymore, right?
And I wanted to ask something about that because yes, Web3 games are trying to unlock mass users, but then I guess Web3 has some kind of unique traits of the way the communities operate, or on-chain analytics, for example. So I'm just wondering, like, how you kind of take the Web3 things and adapt them in a verbiage or in a way for Web2 users, or is that when you would take a Web 2.5 approach, for example? Just wondered what you guys' thoughts are on that.
I think we want to build games, and you want studios that build games that create the least amount of friction possible, right? Like I think you want users to not even go, oh, this is a Web3 game. This is just a game with additional ownership. This is a game that has a wallet that I can keep items through other games within this chain or within this platform, et cetera. I think the more friction we create, the harder it is to acquire users, right? The more drop off you're going to see at the top of your funnel. And so to almost, and this is my personal experience, I think to almost make those things so seamless that people don't even realize they're playing a Web3 game is actually going to be the game that really wins and really creates a huge audience. We still haven't really seen that with a Web3 game yet, right? I mean, minus one game that we all know. But we haven't seen one game really unlock mass use.
Yeah, I tend to agree. So don't use too much verbiage that most people don't understand. Then again, I think there is a subset of power users, which I think it's okay to introduce things like staking and a bit more advanced, things for token holders, governance, but you should not bother the most of your players with those. And I think some lessons from example in other places in the Web3 space, like DeFi, are already there. Like imagine the Uniswap interface, for example, right? So it's super basic. It's actually made for mass consumption, right? You have two fields, or actually just one field, and just one button. That's it. Nevertheless, there are much more things you can do, like super advanced pooling and things like that, but they are nice and hidden away. I think I also see similar stuff emerging at games where the marketplace has center stage, similar to what Travis said. It's about ownership, collecting items, exchanging, crafting items. Every gamer gets those. And if you want to get deeper into the economy, maybe earn something or get a slice of the pie of this marketplace, then you can introduce some things like staking or token ownership or things like that. I think it's okay, but probably for just a small percentage of your player base and your community.
And every game needs that, right? You need your VIPs. You need your 10,000 users who share ownership and represent the brand. And I don't think that changes, right? I think even Zynga would argue that about their casino games, right? Like there is a core amount of users that drive a lot of the value in the game and who come back day after day.
And just looking at ways of onboarding users and acquiring users, and looking at digital player identity, questing platforms, rewards. What are some of the ways that these kind of platforms can help games acquire users? Like, for example, Mieszko, I know that you're working with a number of games within the BGA, such as Titanborn and Forest Knight. What are some of the solutions that you guys are working on together, and how is that helping?
Yeah, so what we are doing for customers is, first, we start out simple, right? So I always think of this acquisition funnel, like I already mentioned a couple of times. So start with simple things at the beginning, right? So how do I reach the right people? So probably this means some social questing on X, maybe some ad networks and things like that. and just that, get in front of your audience. Maybe you let them earn some points. So we usually have this point system implemented before people get into digital assets and in-game items and things like that. So it's really low touch and low effort to follow our Discord, watch a video, get to the subscribed, and you can earn some early engagement with that. But where the more interesting stuff happens is in the middle of the journey. And I think that's also kind of sets up apart with some other solutions. And that's where you really want to build a flywheel of actual genuine engagement, right? So these are not people who are just there to grab your token and immediately sell it somewhere, right? Because that's what happens a lot with these incentive types of campaigns. No, you really want to, for instance, award people who reach a certain level in your game, or maybe craft a special item, or invite a friend, right? Because this is sustainable. If new players are coming in and they are performing actually fun tasks that they are gonna perform anyhow in your game, and then you get the rewards on top and some incentive to invite their friends and new players, that's actually a system that can keep on running, right? Because it's like I said, it's sustainable, and it will actually make money instead of losing money. So I think that's something we see some of that at Forest Night, that we have this flywheel of crafting items, and that works really nicely. Yeah.
And I think, Travis, similar question for you. I know that you have partnered with Polygon to release games from within their ecosystem on Trophy. So what are some of the ways that they will look to acquire users? I'm not looking for like industry secrets, just to get an idea, of like the kind of ways that you guys are working to help these games acquire users, really.
Yeah, totally. So yes, we launched a Polygon partnership at the end of last year, where we were acting as like a Web3 game launcher, helping, kind of like we talked about, helping some of their games acquire their first 10,000 users, so that they could measure those LTV, those funnel stats, to see kind of how those users stick around. We actually are launching in the United States at the end of this month with our app on Android, where we will be launching with some more Web3 games, which we are super excited about. I would actually agree with everything that's kind of been said before me. Our model currently is to help studios get users past certain in-game achievement points. I think traditionally you've seen that work pretty well over the last 5 to 10 years with CPAs and CPEs for certain studios, and we're going to kind of do the same thing in game. What we're going to do within Trophy is we're going to allow 2 users to both start a game and then have certain metrics to see who can get there first. So for example, we'll have somebody come into a game, and out of the 2 people, see who can get to level 5 first. And then once they've gotten to that point, we'll see who can get to level 20 first. And then we'll see who can get to level 50 first, or different in-game actions. And so what we're trying to do is we're trying to measure, are these users one-time users who just want to come in? The first, getting to level 5 is a 1-hour experience. They decide it's not the right game for them, so getting to level 20 is just too much. Can our studios then see that like maybe they aren't pulling a user in those first 5 levels, right? Do they need to give them more items? Does the user need more currency? Like, well, why is there this friction point from a user getting from level 5 to level 20? And so I actually agree quite a bit that I do think that there's some platforms out there that are really good at doing questing. And I think questing to socials at the top of your funnel is really valuable to like start to build your Discord audience, start to find out who those core users are. But for me, with a lot of the studios, like I think the key to what's going to drive success is actually in-game questing. Like I do think you need more actionable achievements that users can see that actually also turn out revenue, right? Like, if you get a user to level 20, you're going to make this amount of money. It's hard to say that when you get users into socials at the top of the funnel, right? And I think you're seeing a lot of studios and people that I've spoken to in the past who really relied so heavily on getting users into Discord for token grabs and different things like that, starting to go, okay, we actually need to drive users to higher LTV activities. And so that's something that we've been working on, and it sounds like Mieszko, you are as well.
Well, we completely agree. So it's not very controversial take.
Easy, easy.
But I do think it took a while, right, for this to land. But we are here, and that's good. The Discord excitement, and I think what is a bit different. So you were asking this earlier. What is a bit different when you introduce Web3 economies into games and things like that? So there is always the talk about price and the token, right? Or often, and that kind of disrupts this front of the funnel a bit, right? Because if people come in, they are super excited and they purchase your token, there's some value created there, right? It's okay. It's not bad. But it's not super sustainable, because if that's the only thing that happens and they don't really get into the game and they don't come back, it's like a one-time thing. So I think, we need to get past that and actually think of more durable cycles.
And I'm also curious to know what solutions out there that you're excited about. What's happening in user acquisition, and what do you see forthcoming in the next quarter or so that will be interesting?
I think there are a lot of, like I mentioned before, there are a lot of analytics platform popping up. There are probably too much to mention, and there are a couple of are also members at BGA, right? So if people want, it's pretty easy to look them up. And I think the tooling is looking very professional. We're using a couple of, we also have some partners which we are testing out in our software. We don't want to provide the whole analytics suite, so we are kind of like try to focus on the in-game part and try to find partners that can show us the journey that leads up to a wallet install, and then connect it to what happens in the game. I think that's, in the long run, that's important. You can function without for a while, but if you would really want to get to up your game as a game studio, as a game, you really need to have view of this. Where are my users coming from? How do they convert to a digital wallet or an account? It doesn't have to be Web3, right? It could also be an account. And what's the lifetime value being created there? So I think the tooling is there, and that's a huge improvement.
Yeah, I would agree. I think you're starting to see infrastructure partners, chain partners start to collaborate, and I think create quite a bit of value. I think people know, the immutables, the beams, that can provide a lot of value to a lot of these smaller studios, from access to more funds, organizing community events, marketing, liquidity. I think you're really getting these large gaming chains that are, I think, getting to a mass point of being able to provide a lot of value to smaller studios. I think wallet integrations and Web3 identity continues to grow and continues to get better. I think a lot, if I was to talk to a new gaming studio today, I would say, don't have a partner for that, right? Let somebody else concentrate on that. I think a lot of games early on were like, we're building our own wallet, which is a big time suck when you should be spending that money on UA ultimately. So I think you're continuing to see a lot of people create some creative Web3 identities that might be able to go across different platforms, different chains. Gaming and IP collaborations, I think you're starting to see that take off even more. I think you're seeing more and more studios start to go, okay, maybe we should collaborate with this really popular NFT, right? Like, they're not a gaming studio, but they are an art studio. Is there potential for us to, what you've seen film do really successfully over the last 20 years is have a built-in audience, right? Like, already acquire a huge audience through a singular partnership. And so I think those are all really popular things. Obviously, plugging both of our businesses, loyalty rewards. I think that is going to continue to be bigger in the space as people try to figure out how they can acquire users and keep them engaged.
You. And I just want to touch on one point, because you mentioned a bit earlier, Travis, about verbiage, and I just wanted to ask, and I know that ultimately everyone wants to create just a fun game, and we won't talk so much about Web3 and, but how much do Web3 games need to educate in this regard, or, just making the process fun is the way to go? What are both of your thoughts on that?
I think that there's a level, I actually think Mieszko touched on it really well earlier, of there is a certain amount of users that I think you do need to teach how to do probably what you would call like higher value items. But for the average user, earning a cryptocurrency or a virtual currency isn't new to them, right? Kids are at it, earning currencies, spending currencies every single day on Roblox and things. Like, when I talk to my friends' kids, I'm shocked at how engaged they are in the economic value of Roblox, like, and how they know how to spend the currency and buy the currency. I'm like, I think that's insane. Back from my time in I used to play RuneScape, as I think a lot of people in this space did, when we'd have to drop items and you'd have to make sure somebody didn't steal the item from you and run by. Like, we've matured, and people really do. And I think there's a lot of games where they don't do, when you play Candy Crush, they don't explain to you what the currencies mean, right? Like, I think, but there are some higher value activities that you probably do need to go more in depth on, but I don't think you should confuse users with that early on in the funnel, personally.
Yeah, I have similar thoughts. But also don't underestimate your audience and gamers and people in general. If they see or feel that it's worthwhile to invest their time and spend some energy on getting to know a concept, it's actually, they will do it, right? But you should avoid trying to shove it down their throats. So, like, the other way around, right? So present some super complicated way which they can earn, and oh yeah, you can have some fun too. that will not work, right? So make it fun, and people actually will spend time, and especially younger generations are super digitally native. There is a big overlap between gamers and actually crypto enthusiasts as well, right? So it's like the double-digit percentages in most countries. So also don't underestimate your audience. And to give a concrete example, I think one of the successes in I would call it a game, but CryptoKitties, right? One of the OG. It was super fun. Nobody was really talking about Web3 gaming back in those days. And everybody could use it, right? It was you collected cats, you were breeding them. You could also earn by selling the offspring. It was awesome. And somehow we kind of forgot a lot of those basic lessons from there. And people were like, there was some education going on, like, okay, this is actually a blockchain powered game, right? You could see this hash of your cat or whatever, but it wasn't its front and center, and it was not required to play the game, right? It was like a bonus. If you want to nerd out or geek out on your cat, you could. And I think we need to go back to that mindset of how that was created.
Yeah, make it about the fun, right? I think you're going to hear everybody say that for the most part.
Yeah, I think it's been a very core topic of 2023 to talk about fun games, and this year there's lots of kind of next step conversations to be had, like user acquisition. I think it's quite interesting that you mention CryptoKitties, because I think Web3 gaming has taken such a crazy journey since then, and we've maybe gone, not full circle, but we've gone through quite an array of different times. I know this is an ongoing topic, particularly for gaming in the Web3 space. And maybe one last thing I can touch on is the cost of user acquisition, because we haven't really talked about that, and I know it's a very practical side of things. Maybe Zeko, you can kick us off with that one.
Yeah, so I think people in general can become more aware of this. So I see the smaller studios still don't really have a grasp on how to make, let's say, the unit economics work. So we hope to help them with that, and I think we're seeing results. And I actually just asked them, right? So before we start campaigns, it's like, well, it's not the first question I ask, because it's kind of like you have to, don't get the purse out immediately when you know what just learning to know somebody. But it's like what the second or the third question should be about budgets, and like, what do you can and expect to spend on a player. It's pretty, it's a pretty central question. Unfortunately, there are some signs that Web3 gamers actually have a much higher lifetime value, right? That's what makes this space super exciting. Is that because people have more ownership, and because they have sometimes some earning potential as well, they are also willing to invest more of their time and money into an experience. So yeah, I think we have the potential to have higher acquisition cost per user, because people spend more in the game. But still, even if that's the case, you have to know what that exact number is. So yeah, what do you think, Travis?
There's a couple things. One, I think that most studios should be making sure that they're trying to unlock as many users as possible. We kind of talked about this earlier, and the sense of like, I think a lot of studios early on were like, okay, we're building a web-based desktop game. And part of that was due to the infrastructure that was out there and maybe not being approved through Google and not knowing what iOS was going to do. But ultimately, I think a lot of studios, since Google's kind of come out and said that they're more pro Web3 and they're going to allow some of these things, have said, okay, let's kind of move into an Android atmosphere, which I think is strong because you're unlocking 3x the players, right? So I think for one thing, you should always, as a studio, try to think about how you can unlock the most amount of potential users. In terms of cost, acquiring users in tier 1 countries is expensive. And if you want to go out in the United States, I would highly suggest that's not the first country you ever go live in, right? I think a lot of studios should test in APAC or some other what you would deem lower tier countries, where they can, at the end of the day, it's all about LTV to CAC, right? Like, you have to make sure that you can get LTV to CAC to be positive before you maybe are going out and spending, $4-6 per high quality user in a country like the United States. I think working with the right networks can unlock lower cost. I like to obviously, speak to my own network and know that if you're looking for a specific kind of user, I can probably offer that user at a lower rate because I've already found that user. But I think this goes kind of on what I was stating at the beginning of this call, is that like it really comes down to diversification and testing, and finding the networks that fit for you. Hopefully that's one of our networks, or but either way, I think it really comes to testing and testing different costs and seeing what the LTV comes out on each one of those networks. It's hard to say that there's like a right number, right? Like, oh, your cost should always be this. I think it's different across the board.
Yeah, again, I tend to agree. So not very controversial discussion here today.
We're not.
But I think I like what Travis did and made it a bit more concrete. I think about those same numbers. So outside of Europe and maybe the Americas, it could be below $1 even.
Absolutely.
And I think in Europe somewhere between 1 and probably 3 or something like that. And in North America, it can go towards 5 even, and beyond. So that can be a lot of money if you're attracting thousands of players, 10,000s, or maybe hopefully people are aiming for millions in the end. So Yeah, there is that, but there is a, what we actually help our customers do and encourage also to do. They have these tokens for a reason, right? So please spend them for user acquisition, and we help them with that as well. So we offer approximately, I think currently it's about $4 or $5 for people coming to the platform, completing quests at our customers, and then they get a token reward in Fangs, right? So our own token. And this really helps to drive down the customer acquisition costs of our customers. And we get to retain a player profile for the future, right? So potentially people can play multiple games and not only visit this one customer that the particular campaign is about, but if they had a fun experience, we encourage to leave there some social channels or maybe their email. Then we can, in a month, email them, "Hi, we have this great new game, check it out." And then suddenly your customer acquisition cost goes in half, right? Because this at least for our platform, because we are already acquired this player, and they are playing their second game, right? So there are smart ways to do this, and actually there are some advantages to being in Web3, because you have these nice tokens you can spend instead of using cold hard, cash, euros, dollars, what have you. So yeah.
And I just wanted to ask as well, because you mentioned Android and you mentioned prohibitive costs, and I just wanted to ask about the external factors that impact user acquisition, like policy from Google Play, for example. As these things change, or what are you excited about that is upcoming that may change, that will facilitate user acquisition, for example?
So I think finally Apple. So lots of stuff has been disappearing, right? A lot of tracking has been disappearing, but what we did get is push notifications in what is it called, the web apps, right? So not in native apps. That obviously they were there already, but especially for smaller games, making 2 native apps is a huge investment, right? And most current Web3 games are actually browser based. But now you can send push notifications on Apple ecosystem iOS, which is a huge win. Which was not possible for a very long time. So I think that's a great thing, and actually will help keep your people engaged, because you can just simply message them. Simple as that.
Yeah, I think policy is what held back people for a long time from kind of making that transition over to mobile. I think Google's obviously kind of, about 6 months ago, kind of put the line in the sand and said, "Hey, we're going to support these things." And I think that was really beneficial to them. I like to believe that iOS should follow up and to some degree this year. Obviously, they want to make sure that they get their 30% on transactions and things of those sorts. I have spoken to some studios that have started to launch their games on iOS, and it's been a case-by-case basis on whether they've kind of felt pushback or not. Obviously, today's a big day because the ETF went live. So I think even with something like that, you're going to see more and more large businesses feel more comfortable transitioning to allowing cryptocurrencies and Web3 functionality be supported. Policy is something you should always stay close to, right? Like, I think our team, we have numerous people on the policy team, but I see it continuing to become more pro Web3 gaming.
Yeah, and to add to that, we also have some really, nerdy on-chain developments happening, like gaming-specific chains, right? Almost everybody seems like they're launching one nowadays. It's still a bit unclear which will actually win in terms of user acquisition. I don't think many have that many users at the moment. But the technology is much better than it used to be, also in terms of giving people a bit more privacy, right? So most of these new chains have zero knowledge built in some shape or form, and also have these IDs we talked about earlier. I think that's also big opportunities are these passports or IDs, where people give them different names. But one of these will take off. We are just not sure which one, but it will probably just take 1 or 2 excellent games and eclipse basically the whole user base we have now, because there are just a couple of million active wallets in gaming at the moment. So yeah, I'm looking forward. It will be exciting times. I place your bets.
100%. I think 2024 is set to be an exciting year for Web3 gaming. And that brings me to my final question. And what is the thing that you're most excited about for user acquisition in 2024?
Well, I'm super excited about the things we're rolling out ourselves, obviously, but that's a bit of a cheesy answer. I'm actually looking forward to success in general, like seeing a game really hit mainstream. I'm pretty sure it will happen. I don't think it will be coming from a place we expect. I think that there might be some, like a Minecraft moment where like an indie thing just makes something genius and people start playing it, and suddenly we'll have tens of millions and hundreds of millions of active users versus just a couple of million like we currently have. So yeah, that's what. I'm not sure if that's what you're looking for, but that will be exciting me most. And obviously, then the technology and all of this will follow, right? So it's all, and parts of it are already there with what Travis is building, our company is building, and many BGA members and others in the space. There's lots of stuff. I think actually there's enough stuff. We need the fun game and just get these people on board and experiment and use it, right?
Yeah, I think what I'm most excited for two things. One, I think user acquisition is going to get easier for Web3 games. I think more and more solutions are coming out like ours, like the THX Network, where we have found a user that is interested in Web3 functionality, right? We've found a user that is interested in earning currencies or holding currencies or having a digital identity or a wallet. And so that's going to exponentially make it easier to find those kind of users. You'll create mass hysteria of more users coming into those kind of networks, which will bring costs down for a lot of these games and help them really start to understand what users and what networks are valuable to them. On top of that, I am excited for fun games, right? Like kind of like Mieszko was saying, is I think a lot of the concentration heavily has been like, oh, what AAA game is gonna really shake things up? And people forget, like in mobile gaming, Candy Crush kind of like blew the top off mobile gaming, right? And that wasn't the craziest game in the history of time. It was a reskinned Bejeweled to some degree, right? Like it was you were matching candies and it was making exciting noises. And at that time, 10 years ago, every single person was playing Candy Crush. My aunt in Oklahoma was playing it. I was living in San Francisco playing it, right? And so I think that actually piggybacking, I think we're going to be surprised on what Web3 game actually does unlock this huge audience. It might not be a huge RPG with items and wizards and all these different kind of things. It might be something that's more casual, right? And I don't think that will be bad for the industry. So I also think that'll help user acquisition because people will start to feel some of the value of Web 2.5 and ownership and some of these things. Then they go, well, now let me go find the other games that are like this, right? Which will make UA much easier for a lot of the studios as they release in 2024.
I think that's really exciting as well, that once we have that great game, that it will send people kind of looking for other gems within the Web3 space. So yeah, definitely super exciting for 2024. Awesome. I don't know if you have any other last points you want to make before we round up.
I really enjoyed our discussion. So, thank you, Travis, and thank you, Melanie. And yeah, I'm excited to the future,
No, I just want to thank you, Mel. Thanks to the BGA. I'm excited to watch it continue to grow. I know we see more and more games starting up and joining the BGA each day. So I'm excited to see the more games, the better, the way that I look at it. So it's exciting time.
Yeah, maybe one extra thing to mention is that I see some possibilities of, the publisher role being like gamers actually funding their own game development and getting a slice of the pie. We had some experiments in that, but I think we'll be seeing more of that in the next year. So, and also some stuff that's happening here in Amsterdam by a Merit Circle, for example, goes in those directions, and it's gonna. Sooner or later, it's gonna work, and then it's gonna be exciting. So yeah. So that will be the true play to earn, right? We'll see.
Interesting. We'll have to reconvene this conversation
Yeah.
in Q2 and see where we're at from the things that we've talked about today. But yes, exciting all round for sure. Great. Thank you very much, guys. I hope to see you at one of the BGA events somewhere globally soon. And in the meantime, thanks so much for all your insights today. And yeah, I look forward to talking soon. And thank you everyone for watching as well.